the behind it.
So it's got the kind of furry sort of line. It's like having a duvet behind the wood. That's what it's kind of like. So
That's been a cheaper alternative.
Duvet behind, I don't know, possibly. I might have done it actually. If you had a duvet behind there, I think we should put a duvet in front of the door to stop the sound coming in. But
or cold.
Yeah, but it's
this is almost a year since we started making the podcast.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hang on,
We're
where are
getting
we?
close
Now
to
we're December.
almost being 12 months in.
Yeah,
When we first started recording.
pretty much 12 months.
Cool.
So yeah, we're a year in. It does seem bizarre, doesn't it?
It does. Lots of conversations. That wall's filling up.
You think we've had more conversations than we actually have? I think we're like 40 odd episodes in, and you think that's not many when you look at, when you look at them all in a list.
Yeah.
But it is a year's worth of work. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. Do you do
It's a lot of words.
Yeah.
A lot of
A
conversations.
lot of words. I mean, yeah. Do you do a lot of interviews and stuff like that?
So I was host of a podcast for 2 seasons.
Oh, really?
But we did it. It is this online radio station in the US, and so everything is done remotely on the computers.
Right. Okay.
And so I did that, and then since this book has come out, I have done a lot of radio.
Right.
Which is nice.
Yeah.
It's nice to be on the other side.
Yeah.
It's nice also to have a producer because I had no producer. I was just like booking my own things, doing all those things. And we just had a sound engineer, and it's great to have that person. But like, if you don't have someone who's doing all the production, it's a lot of work.
But it is a lot of work. I mean, we've done it before where we haven't had a lot of people, so I feel the pain of kind of having to do all of that as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, you organise everything. You do all of the kind of the guest iteration and all
just
that
the
kind
running
of
around
thing.
and the connecting, and it can build up to being quite a lot of work.
It is, yeah.
But how did you? So, what was the opportunity? What was the podcast that you were doing in the States?
Yeah,
it's called Cutting the Curd, and so it was the first cheese podcast that existed in the US, and
that's a great claim.
The first cheese podcast.
I didn't start it. It was started by a very good friend of mine, and then she passed it on, and then she passed away, and it has I think at the moment 2 hosts that are the main hosts, and then they have people who come in for a season or one episode. But I did it for 2 seasons, and it was interesting because it was at the end of the pandemic, and so we were talking a lot about how cheesemakers had to figure out pandemic life while being still in production. And then the war in Ukraine started, and so I did episode on Ukrainian cheesemakers just as the war had started, and so it was a good way of getting people in the United States and the people in the cheese community who listened to it to understand what was happening in Ukraine from a very different perspective from what we were listening in the news. And so that was interesting, and we were nominated for that episode for an award, which then someone else got, and I'm very happy that someone else got. But it was interesting to have a radio show and be able to go and sort of bring stories to light that maybe other people were not thinking about.
It's an interesting perspective as well, and you don't hear that side of things. How do people function on a daily basis and run a small business or a big business?
Yeah.
So how did they manage to do that?
Well, the first thing that was really interesting was that animals don't stop giving milk because there's war. They're just giving milk all the time. And so the pickups of milk were still coming to plants, and people had to process milk. But because all of a sudden there's no restaurants, there's no food service, there's nothing on that end, then you need to figure out a way to sort of move that cheese and that product, all dairy product, which, the problem with dairy is that it's highly perishable. And so a lot of it started going to the front lines, and then food banks and, sort of food assistance. And then what ended up happening was that rennet, which you use to coagulate milk to make cheese, started running out in Ukraine. And so they couldn't make cheese because they couldn't curdle the milk. And so
That's really
from the show, we connected with a large European rennet producer that were like, oh, we have rennet in another part of Ukraine. We will figure this out. And so it wasn't that there wasn't rennet in Ukraine. It's just that because the supply system was destroyed, basically, because a lot of things were moving different ways. People disconnected, and so we were able to connect that, and people started making cheese and all that. So it was, that's one story, and I interviewed 4 people for that show. I don't remember all the stories. It's been a couple of years, but I think that's the one that is most interesting, and that I think about radio so much, because TV has a different way of acting in the world. TV demands an attention of you sitting down and looking at it. Social media demands a different type of attention because you're always scrolling. But radio, because you can sort of tune out and not be watching and just listening, it calls you into doing different things. And so we hear that a lot of cheesemakers listen to that show, the cutting the curd, while they're doing the dishes. This is what we call when people are doing, at the end of the day, they're washing and cleaning the bats and all these things. And so they turn on the radio now, because then it's quiet, because during cheesemaking it's very loud in a cheese plant. But once cheesemaking says stop and you're just cleaning, people turn on the radio and they're like, listening from, all sorts of things they listen to it, but this was one of the shows that people listen to. And so it was very easy to connect to people that, wanted to support cheesemakers. And there's a cheesemaker from Ukraine who's here now, who fled the war and also found work through, these sort of connections that we found through, sort of getting people connected at that moment.
Okay, all right.
So we've met probably was through your work at Food Newcastle, wasn't it?
Yep.
I didn't know your sort of life in cheese at that point. And you started kind of cropping up on social media. And I love cheese, and I was like, that's really interesting. So where did that all start? Your
cheese?
background? Yeah, your background. How did you arrive here?
Yeah.
So
Big question, I know.
The original...
Well, I like cheese when I was 10. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah.
I mean, pretty much.
Yeah, really.
I mean, so really the first moment that this kind of came to be is, 1994 is a big important year in Mexico. And 1994 is when the trade agreement, NAFTA, came into effect between Canada, the United States, and Mexico. It opens up the economy. Mexico was a very close economy, and it opened.
You're from Mexico, aren't you?
I am from Mexico. And then at the same time, the Zapatista movement starts. The exact same day, these two things that have changed Mexico for the past, 30 odd years, completely changed the country. What happened in the sort of like side of commerce and everything is that, we had national cheeses and national food and all that. And then there was an influx of food coming from abroad. And not just from the United States, but really from everywhere in the world. And so my mom tells the story that, we will go into the supermarket and I was bribed for good grades with a piece of cheese. So if you study and get good grades, I'm going to buy you some Emmentaler. And so, which is the cheese with the holes. And so, I was right with that. And there, the love of cheese sort of started. And then, there's story is never linear, but that was one moment. And there were other moments in life. But then I moved to Ireland to study human rights law degree. And I needed a job. And so I went around looking for jobs. And the only place that hired me was the cheese shop in town in Galway, a very famous cheese shop called Sheridan's Cheesemongers. And so I started doing the dishes. They hire me to come and wash the dishes at the end of the day, clean the store, get it ready for the next day. And then after 2 months of me doing that, they were like, do you want to be a cheesemonger? And I'm like, yeah, that sounds kind of fun. And we just took it over and then went back to the US. I work in cheese caves and all that. And so I have had this sort of like running life of human rights law, food policy, while at the same time this cheese life happens at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's not, you're not the only person, Chris, that will say that people are like so surprised that it's like, oh, you know a lot about cheese. It's like, but because my life is like, the other side, the law side and all that. In my mind, it all makes sense.
I was going to say, it must be for you. They just all they interconnect in many ways.
Yeah.
And overlap.
And so much of my life I try to understand through those connections.
Yeah.
I think that the work that I do for Food Newcastle and the food bank in Newcastle comes with a flavor of both paying attention to what farmers are thinking, how they need to think about food and providing food and all that, but also on the side of commerce, which sometimes is demonized and ridiculed for actually wanting to make a profit. And so if you don't keep these two things at the same time happy, you end up with a system that is actually quite broken. And so part of the things that I try to do with Food Newcastle is trying to connect all these dots. And so it's easier to come to farmers or food producers saying like, I actually know a lot about food production in cheese. It's not the same for grain or everything else, but I'm not so distant and foreign that people think that I don't know anything.
So you're relatable.
It's very relatable. Yeah.
It's kind of a crossover, isn't it? Sort of like a passion, but also an understanding. And it's, as you've just said, there's multiple layers as well, because it starts in the farm and then it goes to it's the commerce about it, and then it's business, and then the laws, and then the rights, and then there's so many things that are wrapped up in that. Yeah. And you've got an interest in all of these things, so that really helps sort of drive this forward and keep you interested in it as well, I'm guessing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to trivialize this whole moment, right? But I want to go back to when you were in the shop in Galway, and they said, "Do you want to be a cheesemonger?" Yeah. In my head, it's like a Rocky training montage moment, where all these things start to happen that you have to do from that moment in time. What took you from washing the dishes to becoming a cheesemonger? What did they ask you to do?
Well, the first thing is to eat a lot of cheese. Right, because
try this. Yeah,
and so when you're starting there, you're like, you already like cheese. It's not like you started at the point of not liking cheese, right? Yeah. But you're tasting things, and Sarah, who was my manager and a wonderful person, and now she's a cheesemaker. It's like, try this. And it's like, this is good, and it's like. Yeah, but you need to describe it. You need to be able to explain it to someone. So it's not just like it's good or bad. Nice. This is nice. So that was the first thing, sort of educate myself and pay attention to what you actually are eating and thinking about when you're eating. And so what are the connections that it happens in your mind of the things that you like. And so then you describe things with things that are familiar to you. So
did you find that easy?
I found it
because it's like with if you're a sommelier or a coffee, you do Q grading with coffee or whatever. You got to have a specific palate, don't you? You've got to try and discover that palate and a way to relate with the process of tasting a product. Did it come easily?
I guess the part of eating and tasting was easy. What has been so hard is that my sort of sensory memories are all attached to having grown up in Mexico, and so I have a sort of a primary palate, let's say, that is very connected to that culture. And so sometimes when someone says, "Oh, this is quite nutty," I'm like, it's not like peanuts, which is what my nutty is. Mm-hmm. Yeah. People are thinking more like hazelnut or pecans, and so. Okay. So to try to, I have both trained myself to understand what normally people mean by nutty or spicy or whatever in their own culture and in their own tasting, and also trying to educate myself on what it means to me. And
It's a double translation, though, isn't it?
It is a bit of-
interpret something and then reinterpret again.
Yeah, because if you haven't experienced that, how can you describe that without the experience of that?
Yeah.
You know.
And sommeliers, they will say this as well. People who grew up in Southern Europe identifies, for example, stone fruits as both very earthy and sweet. But people in the north of Europe will imagine more of those flavors as acidic and earthy and not so much sweet. Yeah. And that's because when you're actually eating these fruits. So, taste is subjective. And so we're trying to put words to something that we're all experiencing and trying to, sort of put parameters around it. And so I think that people who are very good at explaining taste sort of account for all of those things. I would say that the hardest part of becoming a cheesemonger was I'm someone who's quite neat. And when you're cutting cheese and when you're, planing cheese and wrapping it, you're always covered in sort of like the muck of the cheese. Yeah. And sometimes you're like done for the day and put things away and you wash your hands and the smell won't leave you. And you're like, and you feel like it's earthy and nice and good aromas, but at the same time, it's like you just want them off you.
Yeah.
And so that was the hardest time coming in at the store, on market day at 6 a.m, because you have to prep because you have to open the stall at 7 a.m. And having had, I was young, I was in university, and so having come after too many drinks, 6 a.m,
cheese,
wall of cheese. You're like, so that was really intense of becoming a cheesemonger.
Because that's the thing. I mean, that can imprint a memory on you as well. So you might taste something that takes you back to that time and go, "Oh, that's not for me." Just because of those mornings, the hungover mornings. So
like diesel and seafood.
I diesel and seafood. Yeah, it's awful. I've been thinking about this as well. The relationship between cheese and wine. Mm-hmm. They're quite close, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's sort of like it elevates what that is, because cheese seems to be very kind of, I don't know, sophisticated in a way, the same as wine does. What's the relationship between cheese and wine? Because they do pair together. Is that just a
great question?
Thank you.
Right. Well, I would say that they,
as opposed to beer and crisps,
nothing at all. It's just it's a complete construction.
It is.
It could be beer, couldn't it? It could be anything.
Yeah.
I think that beer and cheese have more of a relationship.
Yeah.
Really?
Because both are fermentation processes, whereas wine is more a distillation process. I think you're right about saying...
Does one complement the other because of that? Because if there were two together, they would be too similar?
Yeah. And so I think that there is something to say about what cheese and wine makes you feel. Both, at least for me, both of these foods make you feel that you want to concentrate and take time, right? It's rare that you grab a bottle of wine and you chug it, right? Like that. Yeah. I mean, you could, but it's not quite pleasant, right? Yeah. It's the sipping, the slowly.
Not before 7 o'clock start at a cheese shop.
Definitely not then.
It's similar to whiskey, isn't it? You taste the flavour and you got to take your time. You can't just chug it back. It's
Yeah. And then cheese is the same. Like, you can definitely like melt cheese and put it in a thing and just eat it and not think about it. But if it's presented to you in a cheese board or in some other preparation, you're going to take the time and think about it, like, well, what does it taste like? Or maybe, should I eat the rind? Should I not eat the rind? All of this. And so it gives you also that time to think. And so I think at some point these foods become that sort of contemplative moments. And so that's why we feel they're fancy, because fancy really is giving yourself the time to do something.
Yeah.
If something matters, you're going to give yourself the time to do it. And it takes more time. And so there's obviously good pairings of cheese and wine that work well and elevate, the flavor of the wine will elevate the cheese, or the cheese will complement with texture part of the wine experience. So they definitely work. I think sometimes it can be too rarified and turn into complete ideas of perfection of like, oh, you can need to have this vintage with, and then for me that turns really boring.
Yeah,
because I really don't want someone to be prescribing everything that I'm eating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I like finding my own pairings, my own matches. I end up drinking, as I said, more beer with cheese. But that's not to say that I don't drink a lot of wine as well.
Yeah. So are you just having the cheese by itself as well, or is it something? It's a texture thing as well, like cheese and crackers kind of thing.
Yeah.
It is a texture thing. So it's the enjoyment of the texture, and then that's the memory with the wine. That's the right cracker for the cheese. Then there's a little bit of a pickle. Do you know what I mean? It kind of, you almost start to grow this thing. Do you know what I mean? So it starts with basics, and then you start adding things in.
Yeah.
But we all have that memory of like, oh, that goes really nice with that. But it is a texture thing as well.
Yeah.
Temperatures, textures, all of that kind of stuff plays a hand in all of this, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And are you a kind of cheese and cracker person, or do you just go for cheese? That's what I'm trying to say.
I normally just go for cheese. Yeah, I like
just straight on the knife in, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just said yes.
Fridge open?
I was going to say, does it ever not leave the fridge? I do that.
Yeah.
No, I actually do take all of my cheese out at least 30 minutes before I eat it. And so
temperatures.
If I'm gonna be, when I start cooking for dinner, I normally take out the fridge, put it on the plate, on the table, start, prepping for food and everything. And then, maybe 20 minutes in, 15 minutes in, I go and eat the first piece of cheese. And I'm eating the cheese while I'm cooking. Okay. And then when I actually eat for dinner, the cheese course is over, right? Like that's either we run out, or I'm just like, we're not eating cheese.
It's a rolling starter, isn't it? It's a moving starter. Yeah. But are you planning this as well? Are you going, I fancy some cheese, now I'm going to have to take it out 30 minutes before I start cooking? Because this sounds like a process.
Well, to be 100% honest, I do eat cheese at every meal.
All right.
So there is no moment without cheese in my life.
That's a quote and a half.
Quote, yeah.
Yeah, there is no moment in life without cheese. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. It's true.
It's a true. T-shirt,
I'm exactly the same.
It's true. And because I eat so much cheese, I always have it out and, take it out and think about it. Or even I took it out at lunch and I never put it back because it doesn't really need to go back if it's going to be eaten that day. I buy a lot of cheese, but not very big pieces. Mm-hmm. So I buy a lot of types, but small pieces that I know they're going to be eaten within maybe 2-3 days.
Okay.
I think that way I don't get bored of what I bought, because, cheddar is great, but if you eat it every day, it kind of
you've got your utility cheese, and then you've got your cheese.
Yeah. And so then I eat a little bit of everything, and then, there's a lot of cheese at home.
Do you have a cheese budget?
I don't.
It should be a budget with the chancellor, shouldn't it? Yeah. The cheese budget.
Yeah. And I'm thinking you have a separate fridge. Where does this live?
I don't have a separate fridge. We did buy a big fridge when we moved here, because that was one of the culture shock moments of moving to the UK, was like these little fridges under the I was like, well,
where am I going to put my
what's
cheese?
that? Is this the cheese fridge?
Yeah, exactly. So we went, like good Americans, went and bought a massive fridge, and I used the middle drawer for vegetables as a cheese thing. And there is, I mean, I opened it this morning and there were probably 10 different cheeses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm the same. We've got a cheese drawer.
Cheese drawer.
Yeah, we have.
Okay. That's where the veg lives. We've got peppers, onions. We've got carrots in there. Alice, what's in your drawer, in your fridge?
It's not a cheese draw, I'm afraid. It's the same as vegetables and
It's
stuff.
vegetables and stuff like that.
I would have bet that you might have had a cheese draw.
I don't.
Not a cheese straw, a cheese draw.
To be fair, the fridge in our house is very haphazard. There's very little rhyme or reason.
Okay.
The Smith household fridge.
Yeah, I have to admit, I opened my fridge this morning and there was 8 pints of milk.
8 pints of milk.
That feels like too much
Well,
milk.
it's because of this thing of us getting work done at the house, the delivery of milk is keep coming. But we're not going to the fridge because we couldn't get through at the back of the house.
Ah, so still there.
So I opened it and it was just lines of glass bottles of milk.
Well, ours, when you open the fridge, you've got compartments on the left, and we have a small one for the cheese, so that kind of lives there. But it's about that, but you can stack it. Yeah. So there's variations of cheese, and then there's the kids section, cheese string.
Can you get
Kids
right?
like cheese
I do
string.
want to talk more about cheese, right? But I still want to cover your story.
Okay,
So
sorry.
I've got it in my head. Is there a cheese advent calendar?
Well, now what's
I'll
that
get that. Like,
cheese? I think it's called the Cheese Geek. There's a website that they have a cheese advent calendar. I don't know how it works, but yeah, I think they have one. At least they had one last year.
It's keeping
Right,
it on
I'll
the
have to look at
I was
that.
going to say it's keeping it kind of on the shelf, isn't it? Without you walk past the advent calendars, it's
Yeah.
it's quite a pungent kind of shelf, isn't it? Really? Yeah. But
so right,
Yeah.
you've skipped, right? So you're from Mexico. Which part of Mexico are you from?
Mexico City.
Mexico City. You've lived in Galway.
Yep.
You're now in Newcastle.
Yep.
Give me like a timeline
Oof.
of the toing and froing of Carlos and
I think
how
you-
these things happened
I think
and how you landed
You
here.
might be skipping over a few important details.
Which bit?
Mexican accent, Irish accent. How was that a difficult transition?
Well,
Especially in the West Coast.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, can we wrap that answer up in what Chris said as well?
Well, actually, the first place that I moved to, so I grew up in Mexico, and then the first place that I moved to was Cambridge here in England. And
Still much different
Yeah.
to Ireland.
and I learned English there in Cambridge, and then I moved back to Mexico, and then then Italy, and then the US, and then I did undergrad in the US, and then I met my husband, now husband, then boyfriend, and we went to Mexico, then we lived in China, and in France.
This is interesting.
And
Cheese journey.
it's just really like. Anyway, at some point, I wanted to go to grad school, and I knew that I wanted to study something that had to do with migrant rights. That's what I had worked in most of my life after college.
Where did that passion come from?
From being a migrant in the United States and sort of understanding how important it was, but really fundamentally, migrant workers who work in fields. So I worked for the Mexican government in Boston, and part of my remit was then New England in the U.S. And so we will go to broccoli fields and blueberry fields and forestry, and so see these migrants from Jamaica, from Vietnam, people who have never seen the real winter of snow of 2 feet, all that. Working there, and then Mexican migrants and other Latin American migrants working in apple fields and everything. And so to me was very much about a story about food. If you don't have these migrants, there's no food being picked up in the middle of the winter, because broccoli is a winter crop in New England. And so helping that. And so I wanted to study something that will put me in the path of helping more migrants. And that's why I went to the degree in Ireland. And I arrived in Ireland, and I loved it, and obviously I find my passion for cheese as well at the same time. But Ireland was interesting because it was at that time when Ireland was not so wealthy as it is right now. So it was in that sort of transition process 15 years ago, where everything really started to change. And the story about how part of that change that Ireland had was also through food, to becoming quite aware of their local foods and what was grown there, and pride for what is their culture, sort of inform a lot of what I then end up taking back to the US and working on. And so these, while they seem completely separate in my brain, this story of human rights, migrant rights, food, advocacy are quite connected. That's
Very interesting.
It's kind of,
I get that though.
yeah, because the well-traveled story, and you must have a lot of experience or just understanding of different countries, understanding of what that is as well, because it is varied, isn't it? China's different everywhere else.
Yeah.
It's like, Britain, Ireland, you're talking about Mexico, you're talking about America, they all have their own way. So it must help you as you're helping everybody else in understanding, especially with food as well,
Yeah. How did you cope in China with the cheese thing? Because I guess, how long ago were you there?
I was there for almost a year, so something like 10 months. My husband was there for 2 years, so I love China. China is...
Where were you? Where were you staying?
In Xi'an, in the middle of the country. And Xi'an is such an interesting place because it is at the entrance of the Gobi Desert, right? It's the last city before you enter into desert land of China. And so the everything is different. Then there's sandstorms.
Yeah.
And so, here, I just came in from outside and it's wet and cold. And there is like, you come into the house and you're like dusty because there is sandstorms that, and then, there'll be days that you don't see anything. And here in England, it'll be because there's fog, but there is because the sand is so intense that you can't see anything. So that part of China is interesting. And their food, because it has a large Muslim population, they have very different food than other parts of China that will be more Han Chinese or Cantonese. So that was interesting. And there's really no dairy, or at least no cow dairy. But in the south of China, there is cow dairy, and they make their traditional cheeses, which are nothing like anything we eat here. But then China is, because it's so big and, its connections to the West and everything, there is imported cheese. There's
So in the last 5-10 years, is importing a lot, haven't they?
Yeah, a lot of it. And so there's obviously not a Stilton, but there is, Gouda and Emmental and that kind of cheese. And then there's missionaries. Has always been missionaries in China that are trying to convert people. And, some of them have set up cheese places, and so I went and tasted all those cheeses as well. I think they're Chinese cheeses because they're made in China. They're obviously the cow's milk and what the cows are eating are very different, and so that is that's what makes a cheese from a place. So they're very Chinese, but they're Gouda style, so they're in an international style that we all sort of recognize. That sort of sweet flavor of Gouda. So China, a great place, and one that increasingly so much of our food is coming from, right?
Yeah,
half of our spices are coming from China.
A lot of work in China, yeah.
Did you mention something about China and cheese? Did you kind of connect the dots
because I was doing a lot of international trade work, so we'd take cheese farms out to China. We went to Chengdu, went to Hangzhou, Shanghai, Beijing, mostly for trade shows. Mm-hmm. And that's how I started to see. It was controversial at the same time because it was disrupting the Chinese diet. Yeah. Because, it's not traditionally embedded in Chinese culture. A big proportion of dairy in the diet. But there was just a huge amount of interest. And it was, you're right, it wasn't a Stilton, but it was sort of baseline, entry level, what we'd all find palatable.
Mm-hmm. Mild kind of cheeses. Yeah.
But definitely strong interest.
But did the kind of...
I love China.
Yeah.
I just love how, you can travel 50 miles west and it's completely different. Like, completely different. Like traveling through multiple countries and multiple cultures.
So what's that like, trying to sell a food to a nation that hasn't really had it before, and kind of, did they go, oh, this is great, or was it like a bit of a, I'm not sure? Is that why they started?
I think you'd be surprised. I think, when you go to China, it's like going to India now. It's so developed, so far beyond what you would expect.
Oh, but it was
or
kind of
what-
one of those because you haven't had it, you really want it. It was that kind of thing.
Yeah, but I
Or
think there's a huge
pushback.
influx of expats in China. You've got it's a very international place, especially the big, what you call tier one
Yep.
cities like Shanghai. They've got populations of like 40 million people or something. It's outlandish how the scale of things. And with that, I think the way the West perceives China, or certainly the way it portrays China, if you've never been, does not map out when you go there at all.
Yep.
It shocks you, doesn't it? I mean, the scale of commerce, the size of everything, the blend of old and new.
Yep.
And that's what always struck me. You can go, there's a lot of things that China's got right. So you'll see how, like high street retail, for instance, it sounds like a really boring point to make, but it is interesting to see. Like big, huge superstores still work,
Yep.
and they're still there, and they're still thriving, but juxtaposed against all of this, Alibaba and all these online delivery services where you can walk through a supermarket and QR code everything, and your shop just gets delivered straight to your house. You can see the bags getting pulled around on tracks, and you can pick a lobster from a live tank, and so the experience of shopping is still there, but mostly you don't walk out with your bags. You get delivered. But then you'll go outside and you'll see like a 90-year-old woman selling dumplings from a shack. But you still have to pay with WeChat.
Yeah.
So there's a
Yeah,
digital
yeah.
adoption in a really ancient culture.
Yep.
Just seems to work.
It's like Blade Runner, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Kind of futuristic.
Yeah,
kind of.
it is. So it's a fascinating culture.
But it's good though because it's a convenience, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's still keeping the culture there.
Yeah.
So it's not getting rid of it. It's just adding on to it. That makes
Just really
sense.
progressive and open-minded, I think. But so Newcastle. What brought you here? And obviously the work that you do with Food Newcastle is probably important to talk about. How did that happen? Because it's how we met, just through introduction, wasn't it?
So my husband, we were living in Cambridge, in the other Cambridge, in Massachusetts, and he got a job at Newcastle Uni, and so he said, "Do you fancy moving to England?" And we had just lived through the pandemic. It's funny because my pandemic experience was, I think, very different to most people. That I had a regular job that I had already been doing remotely for a long time. And so I just continued doing that. But then a lot of my clients in the cheese world who always wanted me to go and visit their plants and everything, all of a sudden they couldn't open their plants, you couldn't go in. And so they moved to consultancies online. And so I started doing consultancies for them online. And so I had pretty much 2 full-time jobs the entire pandemic of like doing my work in development and then my other work. And so I was getting to the point that I was really tired. And so when my husband said, you want to move? I said, yeah, I'll move because I wanted something different, something new. And I was very familiar with England because, as I said, I had lived here before. And because of how the cheese industry works, I always end up coming here before maybe once a year, mostly to the south, and knowing that every single cheesemaker, it felt like a familiar place to move. So we decided to move, and we arrived in 2021 as the last lockdowns were happening, and all of a sudden, my idea was to bring my job from the United States here and start working. And I did that for a while. And then I said, I really fancy doing something else. And then I started looking for a job. And it took a long time to find a job in England. I think partly because it is difficult to explain everything that that I've been talking here right now to an employer. So an employer normally is like, what do you mean you're writing a book, but you also have this job? Like people like very specific stories of
linear.
And so that was really difficult. And I had very fun interviews with some employers, and they were like, we don't know that you'll be very good at the job because you'll be too
put you in a
distracted.
box.
Exactly.
They couldn't put you in a box. Yeah.
And so when Food Newcastle job came up, which it is about trying to make the food system in Newcastle more equitable, more sustainable, and more delicious, came about, it was kind of the perfect job because it required all of the things that I know and all of the things I do in one position. And so I went for the interview, and in the interview was like, oh, you do sales and marketing, and and you also know about farming, and you also know about chefs and things, and you also know about putting large events together. And it was it felt very good to be like recognized for everything in one job, and so that's what I'm trying to do with Food Newcastle. It is an interesting. Newcastle is going, not only Newcastle, but the entire region is going through a transformative process of change, and I think a lot of that has to do with food. Mm-hmm. And a lot of things that are coming in the next 2 years are going to be also connected to food. And so many of the cities are positioning themselves to respond to the future challenges of food. And that's from the food banks to the offering in restaurants to food waste and logistics. So a lot of these things are happening at the same time. And so I think that is important work that needs to be done at the moment.
What challenges have you seen? What have you seen change in your time?
Well, the first thing is that, this agenda of devolution, I think is pretty good. I think it was kind of mad that so much power was concentrated in London. And so this announcement, not only the election of a mayor that actually represents the region and understands better how the region is useful, but also that, that mayor of the Northeast Combinatory will have a budget to then deliver for people locally is better. It understands things differently. Hopefully they will start talking more about food, because at the moment it's mostly about other parts of the economy, not the food economy. So that's changing. 2028, the Euros are coming to Newcastle. That will change. There is budgets attached, legacy budgets attached to that. So that it's not just a couple of games that come and leave, but actually that programming is created for that. So there's a lot of preparation for it. And then what happens then, and then what happens after. And a lot of that story is about food. Because people who are coming for these big games and they're paying a lot of money, they want good hospitality, and normally good hospitality is delivered through good food. So that's a part of the story. And then on the other side, I keep thinking, March of 2026, the big HMRC building is going to be open in Newcastle. The building has, I think, a capacity for 4,000 people.
Yeah, it's huge.
So one day, we don't know what day, but one day there'll be all of a sudden 300 people that need to out for lunch. And then the next week, there's going to be 700 people coming out for lunch. And then at some point, there'll be 2,000 people coming out to lunch at the same time from that building. And Newcastle, at the moment, is half equipped to receive all of that, but not quite there.
Yeah.
And we need to start thinking about what does it mean to feed these 2,000 people that are already here. What is the food waste that they're going to be producing? How do we actually coordinate things so that we create a better system? At the moment, there's no restaurants.
Yeah, you're right, because
that
at
can
the minute
take
it has to be curated almost, because it couldn't just be, it can't be another 10 Michelin star restaurants. It's got to be balanced. It's got to be inclusive. It's got to match the needs of the people that are coming into the city.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of work to understand how to get that right.
Yeah.
You can't,
You can put a couple of Gregs and figure it out.
You can't just pop the usuals up, can you? You know what I mean? It has to be a balance.
Yeah, it's a big opportunity for the city.
Nobody's thinking about food waste and everything else that comes off the back of that.
Yeah.
So it's quite important, isn't it? It's massive.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So that all of that is changing, and I see it changing. And most of my meetings at the moment, or for the past 6 months, have been about how do we prepare for these big things that are happening in the next 2 years that are going to be changing Newcastle, and not only Newcastle, they're changing every single city. And here sitting at Sheepfold's stables is a good example. Like, as I came in, I see that they're finally making the connection between here and the stadium.
The bridge is open now,
It's important, all that. But this place still doesn't have the capacity to attend to everything that is, if you have a game here of the Euros, it just doesn't have the capacity yet for all that. And that is, we need to start thinking about these big projects because they are connected to food. They we cannot be expecting that everything that we bring is going to be shipped from, Morocco to here. That also has a different conversation. And I think that is, in some parts of the food system is moving really fast. In some parts of the food system is moving really slowly. And so there's a lot of bottlenecks that need to.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you've got to increase the capacity of hospitality, which then puts pressure on local supply chain. Yeah. Do we have the provision from a farming and, production perspective, which we don't at the minute in the north, certainly in the northeast we don't. Yeah. We don't have enough people growing and making food. Yeah. That's one of the issues.
Yeah, but restaurants are struggling as well. It's kind of struggling now, and are they going to be there in 2 years' time for when this comes as well? So that's a question. And I'm guessing, what I was going to ask as well, Carlos, is are you more questions or solutions? Or are you a little bit of both when you're sitting talking about this and trying to,
because of my role, I'm more about questions. I don't have a budget to deliver. I don't have everything that I do works in coalition building, partnership building. And so my point at the moment is try to connect the pieces of the system that already are figuring themselves out. Mm-hmm. And so how do I actually improve some of these things? So one of the good examples that we had that we very recently lost was the Magic Hat in Boston, right? Yeah. It was a cafe that was using redistribute food from M&S and Sainsbury's and Tesco into their offering, and then using that food before it goes into waste, because that food, there's no problems with that food. It's just that they come to close to an expiration date that the supermarkets don't want it anymore. And so then it goes into that. But now that Magic Hat has closed down, we are seeing how important it was for our food system in Newcastle. And so we're trying to figure out how some of that food from the supermarkets can be allocated somewhere else and moved around. And that comes through partnership building, right? Because not every single organization is going to have a van. Not every single organization is going to have an employee that is going to drive that van, that is going to go pick up that food. So if we can figure out, okay, this organization is going to have the van, and then this organization is going to have the capacity at a warehouse to, sort this out, this food, and then send it out. Different organizations do different things. And so some of the food will go to a cooking class, and some of it will go to a food bank, and some of it, and then also putting the pressure on the supermarkets to actually stop producing so much food waste. Yes. Mm-hmm. Because the food emergency provisioning and the other parts of the system are there, and it's great that we're trying to save all this food, but we also need to stop the food waste production on the other side. And so we're trying to engaged with a lot of the supermarkets to say, some of this you need to stop. There's no way to absorb it, and you're just generating waste that then creates other problems. Mm-hmm. Most of our waste, either comes to the incinerator in Sunderland, and very little goes for biomass. That creates also a problem. We don't want to be trucking trash, because then that trash comes to a community, and then the community that is adjacent to these incinerators is a community that doesn't leave, has problems with, pollution and problems of health, and then you create a problem for the NHS that, all these things are connected.
It's a knock-on effect, isn't it?
And we're talking about, the 7 sausage rolls that maybe you didn't need to unfreeze and you didn't need to cook today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So are the retailers listening?
I think what is happening, interestingly, is that AI has made very evident the amount of waste that they produce. And, retailers are not in the business of losing money. They're in the business of maximizing profits, right? Mm-hmm. And so they're starting to see if we plan these things, if we went into bake at, say, noon instead of 4 o'clock, those breads that we're doing, we will have less of them. We will generate less waste. We're going to produce, and we're going to lose less money. And that AI is unlocking for them. And so it's not so much that they're listening to stop producing, they're listening to the bottom line of like, you need to produce all these waste. And so some things are changing.
And sometimes that's the only way to present the argument to them, though, isn't it? If they're not listening at one level, if you can talk the commercial argument, sometimes that's the way in to start those bigger conversations.
And I think that the sort of the everyday people that we talk to, no one wants to waste food. People understand this, so they're trying to figure out how to make it a viable option, because it is all about how many employees you need. Because if you're it's easier just to go and grab everything, put it in a trash bag and put it out, right? But if you want to put that food into a trolley and then figure out what food is going to go to what charity, that is a person's time. Yes. And that is expensive for a company. Putting someone that has to be trained to do that, putting someone who has to be responsible for that, is expensive for a retailer. So we are trying to figure out what is the happy medium between these two things. Always the happy medium will be produce less food, because then there'll be less food to waste. But we still, as consumers, like to arrive at a supermarket that is brimming with food. And so at some point, we also need to start changing as consumers. Like, not because the thing is half empty means that it's bad, right? It's just that this is what there is. So a lot of things are changing, and I think a lot of people's attitudes are changing.
It's a really interesting point, though, because when people see empty shelves, they think there's some kind of crisis or emergency. They want to see abundancy, and they want to see things stocked up, and it's just a psychological response, I think, of people in communities who, like you saw during lockdown. I mean, it was crazy. Toilet roll and flour. It was a great opportunity for local flour producers, because flour was running out in the retail stores, because people go into that sort of crisis management space.
Bacon.
Yeah.
But it's nuts, isn't it? Because even if you did that and cut all of the things down on the shelf, then you're going to get an influx of everybody at one time to get that fresh thing. Do you know what I mean? So it's going to, one will cause something else. It is a complete knock-on effect, but it's how you sell it up to the corporations. It's really how you shape it and, present the kind of the problem and solution.
Yeah.
So, because they won't change unless it's taking money out of their pocket.
Yeah, and I think that's where they're changing, and I think what we're going to start seeing more and more is smaller footprint stores that have limited number of items, that shelves can be replaced faster with really everyday essentials. The Sainsbury's at the station, at Central Station, probably does better than a big Sainsbury's, right? Because they are moving
constant
from people arriving in trains, people living in trains, people that are coming for lunch, and that sandwich that is there was prepared probably that morning and is gone that afternoon. Whereas in the big stores, you have a chicken that maybe was made yesterday, and they're still there at the end of the day.
Yeah, because you're looking at a shelf full of chickens, and you go, are they going to sell all these chickens today? Do you know what I mean? With with the 2-day date on. Yeah. And you can't see it happening, can you?
No.
And then there's going to be another one replacing that one, because you don't want to make it look like your shelves are empty.
Yeah.
So
that's it.
We're on to the point that we're talking about here, aren't we?
Yeah.
So, so what happened to this company as well? You mentioned the company that takes in all of these products.
Magic Hat.
Magic Hat.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that company, so I'm just wondering.
They catered for Fadme's launch when we first launched. They're a fantastic organisation.
What happened?
the building that they were in had a structural damage, and so they needed to be vacated because the building.
Was this just behind Laying Arcari?
Yes,
the
correct.
original, yeah.
And so that is now closed, and they're looking at what to do next. There are other. That was the option in Newcastle, but there's what's it called? There's one in Chesterley Street.
Is that Refuse?
Refuse, yes.
Yeah.
Cafe. It has that sort of same ethos. And I think that there will be others setting up. These are like interesting places that sort of solve two problems at the same time. Middlesbrough has a very interesting system. They have, I think, 15 eco shops. And so these eco shops are places where you can go buy at a discounted price all of these foods that are being saved from the waste stream. And anyone can use them, but they also act as places for food emergencies. So if you're in a food bank client or you're need food emergency, instead of going to a food bank and getting a parcel, this is a place where you can go and actually choose your food. And so, we're trying to replicate in many cities in the region what Middlesbrough has done so well with this eco shops.
They've got accolades for that, haven't they? I mean, they were, what was it? Have they got a silver award, was it? Or
a gold award
for
their work in sort of connecting these things. It's a good way of thinking of like, how do you bring all of this food that is going to go to waste with the people who may need this food. And it's not that you need it because you're in food emergency. Sometimes I think about it this constant because, I travel, and when I'm traveling, it's like, I don't want to go buy a lot of food for the 2 days that I'm still here, right? So I want to buy a little bit less food. And so I always think about these places as like places that are quick, that I can just buy something, maybe one onion as opposed to a bag of onions that, that you're going to come back from holiday and they're going to be soft in your fridge.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, why can't they just make a collective, like supermarkets come together and have an organisation, so there's a place for you to go at the end on one day, and that's the leftover products that need to be kind of sold on that day, because I think it's like a mini pop-up food bank in a way, but at a reduced price. Because there's always people, in the reduced price section in a supermarket, there's always people waiting in a queue to see what's going to be on that shelf. So there is demand for it. So if they could just make that work between them as a collective, do you know what I mean? I think that would be the best thing.
Looking at it'll be a bottom line. I mean, that's why Tesco just reported, those profits is because they're protecting those profits with everything they can.
But the thing is, if you're all doing it together, then you're all just putting a little bit in each. So it's not just one person doing it. Yeah. Like each store, it's like come together because you've got the money. Do you know what I mean? It's like the four. Imagine if you had all the main like Netflix, Amazon, all that. It's like all of them coming together under one roof just for this one thing. Make it an organisation because it needs to happen. Something needs to happen.
I mean, and the way to resolve this is probably closer to what France has done, which is come up with a law from the government that says you cannot be creating food waste. Some of these things are businesses are in the business of making business, and sometimes you do need that sort of like overriding regulation, because what Chris is saying is like so everyone wants to protect their profits, so they're not going to give up profits. So it's not about them not winning something that the other one is not winning, right? So regulation in these situations is good because then it levels the playing field for everyone.
Yeah, but it's leveling the playing field, but on a voluntary basis. That's what I mean. Not forcing them to do it. They'll just go, I think we should do this. Yeah, it's a morality thing. Yeah. It's not because they're going to lose out. They're going to lose each amount. So.
Yeah,
not one's going to be the same as the other.
Totally.
You're just going to lose exactly the same amount without the government going, you have to do this, because I know what happens there. The government does that, and they go, all right, champion, prices go up. That's what happens.
That's the problem, though.
The money has to
it's
go
not
to
just specific to this country, but relying on business to do the right thing hasn't worked. it hasn't worked because you're decent people like us, and you see a collective argument as to how to solve these things. They probably, as individuals, see that. They're probably, you know, if you're the chief exec of Morrison's or whoever, you can see that that's the solution. But your job's not to provide that solution. Your job is to deliver money to those shareholders.
I know.
So I think we're too shy in the UK around food policy and around regulation and legislation. It is a government intervention. It should be. You cannot produce food waste.
Yeah.
I mean, especially because we have two different situations in the UK. The first of all is that there's actually no lack of food in the system, right?
Yeah.
Like the UK has enough food to feed us, all of us. Like other countries have a different problem, which is that there's not enough food in the system. That's a complete different problem. We don't have that problem, right? That is, and so some people think like, oh, you know, people are using the food bank because there's no food. There is food.
Yes.
So much food that we're creating waste. But then the other thing is that we are also an island, and some of this waste we can't send out. We have to process inside. And so we have vast amounts of land dedicated to dealing with our waste. That is a crazy way of thinking about our land, right? In this country, like, you know, we could be solving this problem just with one legislation. And I agree with you, because that, you know, sometimes food policy in the UK is quite shy. The one that shocks me always is that it doesn't, here there's not a need to show provenance of your food.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you buy spices and they say, you know, packed in the UK, but you don't know if the spice is from Morocco or from China. And that makes us a bit that distance from, you know, where our food is coming from. And disconnects us from, you know, we're part of a system that if there's floods in, you know, Valencia, there's obviously no oranges in the UK, right?
Yeah.
But we think like, oh, you know, food just comes from around the corner.
Yeah. But what do you think the difference is? I mean, I've talked about this a lot the last few months, some of the work that we're doing with Northumberland. Yeah. What is the difference between, like, you'll see the importance of provenance in Italy or France, or, you know, I'd use those as two good examples. We're a value-led country, this country, so how we perceive value of food is through cost, not through quality. So how have we, you know, I don't know whether it's because you go on the continent and they've got agricultural economies, so, like, you know, they value provenance and supply chain, whether it's Parmesan or whatever. We don't have that here culturally. What do you think? What's the difference in mentality and behaviour?
I mean, I think
I don't expect you to crack that problem, by the way, right now, but there is a significant difference in our approach to food.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of it is you know, very old politics of having decouple the rural population from the urban population. And that was, you know, at some point there was a, you know, bond study, you know, in every single place, and a different type of pastry, and, you know, that existed in the UK, you know, or a type of cake, and, you know, all of this existed. But the government policies that force people into the major cities of the big industrial cities decoupled that, and so a lot of that culture was lost.
Yeah,
and so that's why when I hear all this talk about devolution and coming back to the pride of places, is a bit of trying to rectify that terrible things that happened. That because we were so separate, because people feel so separated from those places of agriculture, then it is much harder to connect to your food. But this is already happening. This change is already happening in Scotland. This change is already happening in Wales. Yeah. You know, there is pride on Welsh lamb.
Yeah.
You know, it not only sells well in the UK, it also sells, now it's an international brand. Like, you know, Welsh lamb is recognized. And so that is happening little by little. And I think that some of the work that places are doing, I think in Northumberland, with, you know, different types of potatoes and different types of, you know, even in the fisheries, people are starting to connect with that. I think more work on that is necessary. More work of showing how these things about local pride is also about creating employment locally, creating opportunities locally. It will push people to recognize that more.
I think the challenge, and you'll know this because we work in the same space, is that I always made the assumption, certainly when I started Food and Drink Northeast, that a lot of that could be achieved bottom up. Yep. Because if you got, I mean, me and Alice were just talking about this before you arrived, about cheese in the Northeast. We didn't celebrate. We don't celebrate a lot of the good things that we've got here in terms of assets around food. I thought if you galvanised the supply chain and got people excited about it, the work that we did during lockdown, that would solve the problem. Yeah. But now we're 5 years in and we're still questioning where food and farming belongs in the industrial strategy and why it's not, to me, why it's not front and centre of a region like the Northeast. Mm-hmm. So it dawned on me very quickly that it couldn't just come from the bottom and going back to government intervention. It's got to come from the top down as well. People have to care enough, like they did in Scotland. So you look at the work at Scotland Food and Drink, and in Wales you mentioned. Similarly in Ireland, I mean, you fly to Belfast and you come out of Belfast Airport, and it's like an art exhibition of farming and food brands that are from that area. Mm-hmm. It's not like it's a very grassroots celebration of their food culture, which is very easy to do. I haven't found that easy here. Yeah. And we're 6 years in our journey in the work that we've done, both with Food and Drink Northeast and with Local Heroes, which is all storytelling around that space. But then I still struggle to answer questions from the likes of Alice this morning. What did you ask again?
Do we have like a cheese that we're known for, like a local cheese, like a Wensleydale, but of the Northeast? Because we make cheese.
I have a response because I understand what I like from the Northeast, but I wouldn't expect anybody to have an obvious answer to that question.
Yeah. And you know who I think is doing a very interesting work, but they haven't made that whole jump into it, is Fennec.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because Fennec does this like funny things of like bringing, in their food hall.
The pop-ups.
Pop-ups.
Yeah.
And what they're trying to really do is, take some of that independent vibrancy that exists in the region and bring it into, their space. But for, right now there's Pink Lane in it, or and who else is at the moment? Anyway, what they're really trying to do is curate something that is local.
Yeah.
But they have focused so much on brands as opposed to products.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They could, if they had a good food curator, they could be what you're describing of Northern Ireland. They could be the sort of like playground of food that you walk in and it's like, Doningtons and Donington's cheese and ice cream, and then you could have the fish from Holly Island and
it's a really good point. I'd never thought about it that way before. I haven't really.
I mean, I think
it's like the produce is hidden behind the brand rather than the other way around.
Yeah. It is, because
so if you talk about,
first,
you might want to talk about langoustines or amber lobster, but you won't. You'll talk about saltwater,
saltwater,
which are all great businesses, but it's the brand first, and then it's the produce story second.
Correct.
And I think it's a hugely missed opportunity. But even on basic things, I mean, we laughed, didn't we? You said, let's build a campaign around the fact that Northumberland produces leeks, right? Yeah. And people kind of get a little bit like, it's not very sexy, is it? Well, it is. It could be, if you believed in it enough.
Well, that's the thing,
I mean, there's places in Spain that are known for a little onion.
Yes,
and and they have pride on the little onion, and they have hats of little onions, and they have souvenirs. I think leeks are kind of sexy as well.
Yeah.
But I think that I think there was a store in Durham that was trying to do this. The sort of like best local produce.
Discover Durham. I think it was Discover Durham, wasn't it?
And I think it was successful. But then I don't know what happened to it. I think there is an appetite for it. Is it an online thing that could be done? So it is, more people can actually get it. Not everyone has to go to downtown or city center in Newcastle.
Yeah.
Anything that creates this, like the products are there. Someone just needs to like pull them out, which is what I like. So,
pre us meeting, did you know that this is where this started? Then
Yes,
you know
I mean,
we were aggregating boxes of food to promote. You know, we did like the fish box. It was when the boat comes in, a fish box, which had postcards telling stories about the producers and the places, and it was really well received.
Yeah,
but you could see I mean, during lockdown, it was crazy. Right, and it really was. And if we had a bit more geographical bandwidth to do what we did beyond Newcastle and probably going into Gateshead, it probably would have grown.
Yeah.
But then as soon as I think we went through a period of romanticising local, didn't we, during lockdown, where it went from crisis to, I've started buying local flour, to this is fantastic, I do it all the time, to go back to normal. And then you could see it just kind of do that again.
Yeah.
I don't think it ever went right down again. I think it flatlined in a better place because people are more educated about local food, but it's still nevertheless dropped significantly and made things like that just impossible to run because there wasn't, these are small businesses. You work with some cheese farms in the northeast and they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. They want to grow, but they don't always have the resources to be able to grow.
Right.
So that, they're trapped in these two worlds where to grow, they're going to have to invest.
Yeah.
But they can't afford to invest, or they can't afford to bring new people in. So they straddling this line all of the time as to how to make their businesses successful.
It did help see people kind of found what was on the doorstep. You know? It really did kind of promote what local was and what you could buy local.
Yeah.
And just on that reason, because I was in Fenwick yesterday, so I was having a look and the brands were standing out to me. I was like, oh, it's Pink Lane. I wasn't looking at the sausage roll or the pie or whatever it was. I was doing that. But one place I did recognise was doing it right, I think, was Turnbull's.
Yeah.
When we did some films for Northumberland.
Yeah.
And I walked into Turnbull's and it was about the produce there first, before anything else, because that was standing out to me. And then it was just written underneath where that came from and who the brand was, unless it had a label on a jar. But that really stood out. And I was like, actually, and it was really full. Everybody wanted to spend in that store. Yeah. So that was like a supermarket for local.
But it's exciting. It makes you kind of food curious.
Oh, completely. I mean, I went into work, I bought 4 things. I came out with food during. So it worked for me because I was really keen to taste it all, Yeah. I was like, I've never had that. Oh, yeah, I know them. Do you know what I mean? It kind of became that. And I was excited about that and wanting to spend the money, So,
and I think that if you set up one of these shops in the Grainger Market, one here in Chiefs Falls, then it will be like people will come.
I know they would.
Like I was there yesterday at the Quayside Market, and there's a lot. It's interesting what has happened to the Quayside Market, because now there are all the food trucks on one side and then the other produce on the other side. It's interesting because it has like concentrated that food offering, independent food offering of Newcastle in one location. And it's interesting what new restaurants are popping up and who's setting up shops there, because then that in 2 years, the Mexican place making tortas is going to have a restaurant, right? Yeah. And that is the sort of like
business.
Exactly. It really does. But then there was also a farm stand that was selling vegetables, and I wasn't just prepared for buying vegetables because we were for a day out, but I was like, if there was another one here, or now that I know that I can come by here something that is quite local, and some of the market at the Jesmondine market, when back in the day when Hexhamshire Organics was there, all of those places had a place to be seen. It was important to have them. I think people are excited to go and do it and buy it. It's just, where do you find them? And I think we need to think about places that are more obvious, like at least in Newcastle, at Grainger Market. There's no reason that
Grainger Market's the obvious place. It really is.
Hopefully, once the renovation is done, that place will actually be.
It should scream Provenance, shouldn't it?
It really should. It really should.
Yeah.
It's like a separate podcast. We could do a full series.
We could do it. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to talk about. Yeah.
I want you to talk. Right. Admission. I bought your book as soon as it was released, and I didn't bring it today.
It's okay.
But I had a reason. Tell us about your book, the journey of the book, the title of the book, how it all happened.
So is One Cheese to Rule Them All. And that's the name of the book. And it's written by me and my very, very good friend, Patrick McGuigan. And we're both judges of the World Cheese Awards. And we have been judges for the past 15 years.
Didn't Patrick write? Is he write for The Guardian as well?
He's a food writer, writes for The Guardian, but many other places as well. And the awards were turning 35 last year. And so we were very attached to the awards. We know the people who put it together, the Guild of Fine Foods, and we wanted to do something. And so we started thinking about it. And I came up with this idea of sort of showcasing a bit of the backstory of the awards. So I don't know if you have seen this movie called Best in Show. It's a movie about dogs.
Yeah.
But it's a wonderful sort of mockumentary, and I wanted to present that for cheese, like the quirkiness of judges and the quirkiness of the competition, and and so that's how I started with the idea of the book, and then it developed into I think a very fun project that we wrote together. So we chose 100 cheeses that have most of them have won medals at the World Cheese Awards, and we go beyond the sort of explaining flavor, texture, and pairings to a little bit of history, but not the normal history that you hear about these cheeses. There's a lot of books out there that are like, Stilton is named because blah, 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 which is great. And they're good books to have. But this one goes a little bit beyond, and it tells you about the politics and the economics and the ecology and all of the other nuance of cheese, but also of the quirkiness of the producer and maybe the family of the producer or maybe the town that is made. And so it's both a travel guide and an introduction to these cheeses. So we plan it it's divided by decades. The World Cheese Awards starting in 1998. So we have the first chapter is the 80s and 90s, then the 2010s, the 20s, and then we end up with 10 cheeses that we think are going to be the cheeses that are going to be winning medals in the future, and try to give the reader a sense of what makes a good cheese and an award-winning cheese. And then, we talk about how, what is the one cheese to rule them all, and you'll have to buy it to know what that is.
I'm going to do something really unfair and put you on the spot. So, because we do little giveaways, right, on our Patreon site.
Yes.
So if we agree to do a giveaway of 5 of your books, could we get you guys to sign them?
Of course.
But the people we can do this after the podcast because you can't tell us now. But I guess people need to know your top 3 cheeses.
Oh, I was going to ask that question as well.
We're not allowed. I was going to ask it.
We're going to have to save that one.
But we're going to have
Right.
to save it because I want to know what your top 3 cheeses are.
That was my
not
question.
what's in the book, but what your go-to on a Saturday night when you're cooking cheeses are. Your mind's going already, I can see.
Yeah.
I mean, I would tell you that my 3 top cheeses are in the book. It's funny because I said to my editor about a month ago that someone asked for something else for a piece that I was writing, and I was like starting to write, and I was like, oh, I need to think about that cheese, and I was like, oh, I have a little bookcase that has a lot of cheese books, and I went there, and the first book that I grabbed was mine, and I was like, I was reading, and then I was like, this is very different. It's like to actually go for your own book to read what you actually have said.
Yeah,
is braggadocious of me doing it, but it feels very good as opposed to going to the Oxford Companion to Cheese or any of the other big cheese books now. And now I can be like, it is my book. That I look
You should be really proud.
So it has a lot of good cheese information and
proves a point. It proves a point that needs like that.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? You need that book just to pull it off the shelf.
You do.
The one-stop shop.
Yeah,
I think, do you know what I mean?
100%.
So yeah. But
So we'll do that afterwards, right? We'll
hold-
get you to do a little piece telling us your top 3.
It's great that
And we'll
they're in
release
the
it.
book though, because that helps, doesn't it? Right?
Yeah.
Because people will be like, "Oh, what is it?" You know what I mean? So yeah, we can't find out. That's a good guessing game, right? Brilliant. All right.
Are we ready?
We're doing the menu. I don't know what.
Before we do the menu, I'm going to ask a question. Do you know where the cheese? You could just embarrass me massively here.
No mac and cheese question.
The cheese course in history.
Okay.
Is it true that it comes from the cheese course is always related to acid reflux? And have you ever read this?
I have never read this.
I don't want to get my chronology wrong, but it goes back to like medieval times. Was I just telling you this earlier? So the cheese course there was a belief that the heaviness of the cheese caused a seal, right, to stop acid reflux after a heavy, rich meal.
So that's why it's after.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm going to throw.
Please.
Yeah.
Please, can you check? That might have been a fever dream that I had last night, and I've just made that up completely. I've got no idea. But I tell you what, it'd be great if it's true.
But we've had this conversation before, and I cannot figure out for the life of me why the cheese course is last. I'd be like, that's more of a starter for me. I would have that.
I've got no rules
Like
around
Cheese first.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing them when you eat, when you're cooking, so yeah. But it's unusual for me, you know.
I don't have a place. I
almost
would have
having
it all the time. Honestly, it
having
could
your
be
starter
before,
after the
during,
thing.
after.
I mean, a cheesecake I get, but not a. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, my favourite is actually after running a market. I always buy cheese, and it'll be out for the whole weekend on the table.
Just
Saturday.
Just the one.
But maybe 4 or 5 cheeses.
4 or 5 cheeses.
Yeah,
That must be
just
a heavy,
sits on a wooden board.
It's a heavy cheese bill as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah. Because you can't go cheap with cheese, can you?
you can't. I mean, you can.
Well-
We've just been talking about cheese on nachos, haven't we? But
The cheese on naturals.
plastic cheese.
That's a different cheese. What's a cheese
I
strings
know- that's
plastic,
what I
isn't
know
it?
is-
So, yeah.
Do you have like a bad cheese habit? Do you kind of now and again pull out a Dairy League triangle from your pocket?
Well, I tell you, I tell you what, because this is on here, isn't it?
Yeah, we
I
could
think
do this whilst Alice is researching.
We'll do like a guilty pleasure. So I think as guilty pleasure, we don't get asked a lot of. So your guilty pleasure with cheese, I think it's that kind of related question, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what is your guilty pleasure with cheese? Is it like a, Baby Bella?
Is it like a fly on a wall moment? Nobody's looking.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to say that yes, I'm that, but I'm a snob, and sorry, but my guilty pleasure when it comes to cheese is a bit of cheddar and kimchi,
Okay.
Ooh.
All right. Okay.
because they feel both very wrong to eat together, but they're very good together, and so it's like, and I do that at the fridge door.
Just a slight.
Okay.
Just like open the thing.
Yeah.
I need it like
I
that.
love it.
Yeah.
It's totally guilty pleasure, and this is no sitting out. There's no like.
Yeah.
I don't even get a fork for the kimchi. I just go for it with my hands. Totally guilty pleasure.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah,
But that's
we've
it.
all
but,
done
yeah.
that.
Yeah. But that's
That's usually a cornichon for me.
Yeah. But it's that 10 seconds that the fridge turns into 2 minutes, doesn't it? You can't just have the one. You have to have more, don't you? Yeah.
And then the fridge starts screaming at you, or at least my fridge just goes beep, beep, beep. It's like, okay, I'm going to close the door.
I'm always on a 4-second cycle, so I stand, then I touch the thing just to reset it so it doesn't beep. Because you don't want to cause house alarm.
Yeah.
People knowing that you're raiding the
I thought you
fridge.
put a bit of cheese over the sensor or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Because it would work, wouldn't it? I think
Just
you'd get
like a baby bell, moulding it.
Mold
Just-
it in, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. Sort that out.
Alice, what's the answer?
I can't find what Chris was on about.
Oh,
a
favourite
few
drink.
sources say it was kind of like to cleanse your palate before dessert and after eating. So like similar, but I
So it's in
can't-
the middle. It's a kind of
yeah.
main.
Maybe if I had
cheese,
more
then
time,
dessert.
I could try and find.
You could try and
those.
make up a truth
Yeah.
to help me out here.
But I'm afraid I can't do that right now.
Yeah, but it sounds good.
Where
Do
did
you know
I
what
find that?
Yeah.
I have a friend who wrote a PhD on cheese culture in France in the, I think, 1700s. I'll ask him.
Please
He'll
do.
give us a good answer with references.
The competition. Was Chris right? Was Chris wrong?
That's a good Patreon question, by
is,
the way, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Was Chris right?
Yeah.
We can do that a few
I
times.
think I might be,
There is
I
sometimes
do something niggling.
Yeah. I think is that, because
What do I
you probably
win?
talked
What do
about
I
this-
win if I'm right?
Yeah, the rights to be right. I think that's all it is, isn't it? Yeah. But there must be something. It's one of those, like, false memory thing. You think you've heard it before,
I do all the time.
but Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it makes sense to you, so then it becomes a thing. There's lots of those, aren't there?
I woke up this morning panicking that I hadn't fulfilled a chocolate order.
Really? Your chocolate order?
Yeah, but I can't even remember what the context was.
All right, okay.
I just woke up going, shit. I need to deliver that. And then, you know, when it dissipates and you go, oh no, I was just dreaming.
Yeah. So
yeah. Heavy cheese hitting at night.
Heavy cheese night, that was it. Yeah,
Hang on.
I was there.
Here's a question. I don't know whether we're going to get to this, mate. Here's a question. Is the cheese dream a thing? People say, you know, you have cheese before bed.
Yeah.
My family still say that.
Is
Really?
it a thing?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, a lot like meat sweats, right? Like your body has to like process all of that. The same with cheese, like it's salt, fat. So your body is like trying to break down all of this into energy. So you start sweating, and there is some people who, in the process of digestion, get like starry-eyed and get dreams, and
Okay.
some of them.
Yeah.
Some people do report that they're having bad dreams, but not everyone has bad dreams. They just have vivid dreams.
Okay. There must have been a study. Is there a study?
I'm sure
on
there
this?
is a study.
Oh, I'm sure,
I went down to a forest with a couple of mates and took a few cubes of Stilton.
Yeah, no, you go.
I know.
It's just a controlled study, right? You got to eat that and then go to sleep, and then we
What's your
record the
cheese
data.
dream?
Yeah, what's your cheese dream? Yeah. What's your worst? What's your worst cheese dream? Have you ever had the most bizarre cheese dream?
I don't know that. I don't know that I get cheese dreams.
Is it because you
You're
eat
too
it so
hardened.
often that
I
you're already
probably
kind of
eat too often.
Do you dream often though? Because you eat cheese
Yeah, I
a lot.
eat a lot.
Yeah.
I dream a lot too.
You
But
dream a lot.
yeah, because this is a completely different podcast. But I have
Well, this is
This is it. I love it.
We're just warming up.
hyperphantasia, which is this new thing in neuropsychology that some of us can imagine a lot, and there's people who are aphantasia who actually, when you tell them, think of an apple, they can't picture an apple in their head.
Okay.
And so there's these two extremes of people who over imagine. And so if I say, think of an apple, and you close your eyes, and then you're like, tell me, well, I was thinking of an apple on a plate in the light. It's like, well, you didn't eat all that. Your brain just kind of filled that up.
Yeah.
So I dream a lot because I have a hyperphantasia. So I over imagine things.
Yeah. I'm like that. I mean,
like
I've
that
just,
as well.
I've just had 3 different ones when you said apple. I just went, I'm like, there's so many different ones. I went straight to Isaac Newton, then I went to something else. Do you know what I mean? So I'm like, it's that fallen apple thing went straight to my head. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And then there's
we're
people,
like-
people have no imagination.
Yeah.
Like people who can imagine anything.
yeah.
And they live in a more literal world. And there's nothing better or worse for any of us, but it's just how our brains process information and imagine or not imagine things.
I think there's a podcast in that, when you just have people around the table and you talk about last night's dreams, cheese
I
dreams.
thought it was
Cheese
like a
dreams.
control study.
Yeah.
That we all just eat a lot of cheese and see what
but,
happens.
like Diary of a CEO, when they're all around the table and there's a spotlight and you're talking about your cheese dream. It's kind of really serious question. You know what I mean? I think it should be something like that. But, yeah.
Let's make that happen.
I'll bring
really
the cheese.
interested.
You bring the cheese. Yeah, you bring the cheese. Yeah.
But you
We'll
do,
bring the
yeah,
kit.
you do it like a mini doc. So you eat the cheese, everybody knows which cheese, and then the next day you do
Right,
the
you do
study.
realize that I'm taking this seriously, don't you?
Well, yeah, that's why I said it. I mean, this has become a thing. We always discover new brands or new ideas in this room, don't we? From this row.
I want you to pick one.
All right, sorry. Yeah, just pick anything from there. These are just categories of silly things. We know the
The
questions
last
too.
question's going to be hard.
Cheese dreams is a good one, though, wasn't it?
Brilliant.
So you want me to answer or just one
anything,
there?
Anything,
Take
anywhere.
treat it like a topic.
So I asked you guilty, so we know what that
yeah.
question is. So you just pick anything.
I'm going to take hot and cold
All right,
because
okay.
I actually love tepid food.
Everything tepid.
Yeah, I prefer things that are like tepid.
Okay.
I think it's from my cheese life that I don't like it out of the fridge cold.
Yeah.
I also don't want it like bubbly melty. I want it like
See, I completely agree with you.
Room temperature cheese.
I don't get you know, it's like a review that I grew up with, hearing people, family members or friends used to judge restaurants and say food was piping hot. I used to go, that sounds awful.
Yeah, awful.
I don't want piping hot food.
Too hot.
I want to take the layer of skin off the top of my mouth
Yeah.
to eat. I like tepid food as
Yeah.
well because it's immediately accessible.
I think it's across the board though, like too hot tea, you know, and it's like when it's too hot and you've got to manage, you've got to pour a little bit of water in and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's everything's like that though, you know.
That's a very, very good answer, that, Carlos.
That's why I have so much trouble with Scotch eggs.
Yeah.
Because I want to love them, but also if they're given to me cold, I'm like,
But if you have one in a restaurant that's just warm,
Yeah.
with a
Exactly.
runny yolk, yes, now that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, cold
Tepid,
Scotch
yeah.
egg. Oh, yeah.
Dry and
It's like eating leftover mash from a fridge.
yeah,
Like, where you can slice it.
yeah.
yeah,
Who wants to eat that?
yeah.
Yeah.
You can cut it into a cube, mash cube.
You know, the other thing is like pizza. You know, people are like, "Oh, cold pizza is amazing," but tepid pizza is better. You know,
Yeah.
like, I'm sorry.
A campaign
I
for
know
tepid
that
food.
I know
love it.
some people are gonna be very upset about this conversation.
I love it.
Yeah, this is the
I
new.
like it. Like if you, I've got this vision of you walking into loads of dinner parties and that, and where's Carlos? He's left. He's really pissed off about the
Yeah.
temperature of the food.
But how?
It wasn't tepid enough.
How's he judging? Like the back of the hand, kind of.
Yeah.
Because you can
Yeah.
feel it a little
cheek.
bit better. Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
it's too hot.
Should be a restaurant.
I mean, I
with
do
tepid.
for coffee. I do put my finger in before I drink it, because if it's too hot for my finger, I don't
Yeah.
want to drink it.
I do it with my knuckle of my index finger.
That's tepid food.
Tepid food. This is a new restaurant idea, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. When we open it.
With local produce.
Yes.
But it changes the flavour of something, though, doesn't it? You know, something cold and something hot can completely change that whole what that.
Well, I
what
just
that
think
item
cold
is,
and
you know?
hot generally hides flavour.
Or too
But
much of one than the
tepid
other.
allows you to kind of. Like, I'm in a Thai curry last night. I waited until it was tepid.
Yeah, it has to sit.
Yeah.
It's better sat, I think.
And you can pull out all the flavours.
Yeah.
I think fish and chips is also the same.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like too hot fish, you can burn your tongue. You don't actually taste the fishiness of it. You just taste the batterness of it. But if
Yeah.
it's like, you know, at that perfect temperature, you can taste the sort of like if the fish is good, and then you know that, you know, maybe this chippy wasn't very good because, you know, that fish tasted really bad.
Exactly.
So it hides food.
Heat hides everything.
Yeah, hides the flavour of it. Heat hides the
Heat
flavour.
hides
yeah.
everything. Yeah.
We talked about this with pies last week, didn't we?
Yeah.
Like too hot, when something's far too hot with a pie and it burns your
You've got
lip.
to do that.
Or, yeah. Yeah, you're trying to bring in the cold air to kind of cool it down. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I don't know how this question's going to go.
What? Oh, the last one. Hey, I'll grab that from you, Carlos. What's your Greg's
You know
order?
Michael Dixon's.
Are you frequent of Greg's? Do you like Greg's? Are you a Greg's guy?
I like a vegan sausage roll.
Okay.
I also love the story. I don't know if it's true or not, that, you know, Greg's brought it as a one-off, and then the demand for it was someone said they haven't been able to take it off the market,
Yeah.
which tells us a lot about what we imagine is comfort food.
Yeah.
And that even in comfort food, people are looking for options that are, you know, more sustainable or maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
And
Greg.
it was a good barometer, though, wasn't it? Like for a mainstream brand like Greg's to step into the vegan world like that, and for it to be such a success, is quite vindicating, isn't it? And it tells you that where people are heading, I guess.
It's a good question for the tepid as well, isn't it? Because I think Greg's is a very. If it's tepid, it's probably better eaten tepid because too hot pasty. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And too cold, it changes the whole texture of the pastry, doesn't it?
True.
So
Yeah.
it has to be tepid.
It has to be a tepid. Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
The word of the day
It's
is
to go on the
tepid.
bag now, you know. Cold, hot, tepid. Tick.
Serve tepid.
Yeah, serve tepid.
Tepid.
Oh,
Before
God.
we finish, I would like to vindicate you real quick, Chris. So there was one of the oldest manuscripts on cheese in the world. Apparently, was from 15 something.
I mean, I'm not trying to say I'm highbrow, you know, but, you know.
Yeah, from the 1580s, and in it was people just writing about cheese, how cheese was made in England and stuff like that, and kind of when to eat it in part of a meal. A quote from it was saying, the best towards the end of a meal, cheese doth press down the meat at the bottom of the stomach where the digestion is best. So
Mary's dear.
there you go, Chris.
Amazing.
Right, okay.
I learned something about cheese
Right,
today.
so my book comes out on the...
Is Chris right? That's the new book, isn't it?
Oh, dear me. Fantastic.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Carlos, thank you so much. It's been great.
Thank you for having me.